we have a couple things in there. There's a lot of stuff in that. And what are we going to talk about? What are we going to pull out of that? Well, for one thing, first of all, I want to talk to you about what our community is based on. It says there in verses 4 through 8, talks about Jesus Christ. He was a capstone. He was a rejected stone. Right? You know what the capstone is? Some of the engineers, some builders in here. Have you ever built a building? The capstone is it's the most important stone that you lay out. It is the stone in the arch that's in the middle of the arch that's holding the whole arch together. It's the biggest stone. Sometimes the capstone, the corner, is called the cornerstone, is also the first stone that you lay down. It's the foundation. It's the most important stone in any building. It's where it all begins. And you can't just have just any random piece of rock and start with that. It's got to be the best. It's got to be the strongest thing out there. Because everything you're going to build focus and centers around this one thing. And yeah, you can tell that there are stories of in building you got to pick and choose one, and it's the worst one. And the ones there are some that you just say no, that's not going to be worth it. That's going to be worthless. And Jesus is called the cornerstone, which people have rejected. We look at the life of Christ, right? Was he accepted by the people? Some of them. Some of them loved him. But usually it's the people who didn't matter too much to everybody else, right? Those prostitutes, tax collectors, fishermen, shepherds, strangers, foreigners, sinners. The establishment looked at Jesus and they saw just another hooligan running around with a bunch of hippies. Let me use some old terms. Saw another ruffian, just not meaning anything. He's just a carpenter. He's a blue-collared man. What's he got to do? What's he going to say to us? All right, but God has taken the one most obscure person in the world, and He has turned him into, and He has used him as the cornerstone. It's not the first time God did something like that, is it? We look in the Bible and we see stories where He's taken the most obscure person, the worst person that's imaginable, the one you can't imagine doing anything for the kingdom of God or for anybody, and He's turned them into a hero. King David, the youngest shepherd boy. He had 7 brothers. He had several older brothers before him. Samuel the prophet came to his house and he said, came to Jesse's house, says, "Tell me about your sons. One of them is king." And they passed by one after the other, and Samuel looked at the first son and he said, "Wow, this guy is handsome. He's strong. Looks like he got a good head on his shoulders." No, God said, that's not the right one. And one after another, brother after brother came up, and God said, no, that's not the right one. Then they said, you had a boy, you had sons. David's in his fields, tending his sheep. He comes up dirty, nasty, bruised, beaten, tired, probably looking like, like he put in a hard, how you look when you put in a hard day at work, right? You're not pretty. Nobody's pretty. And David's there, and Samuel said, "God, are you sure? This one?" It's a R. Kelly version of the story. "This one? You sure?" Okay. The worst of the lot. Jesus was described as somebody not really good to look at. He wasn't a handsome man. Women, you would not be fawning over him in high school, in college. You wouldn't look at him twice. He's not a pretty man. But he is the one that God has chosen to be the cornerstone. The ones people wrote off as a nobody, as a point, as just we kill him, we get rid of him, his legacy will fade away, nobody will care. God has taken that and He used that as a chosen and precious cornerstone. And the one who trusts in Him will never be put to shame. The stone the builders have rejected has become the capstone. Capstone. He's the basis of our community. He's the basis of our hope. He's the basis of our trust. We can put trust in Him because He's never going to fail us. He's never going to leave us. Peter said beforehand last week that it is a hope that is imperishable, undefilable. It's always going to be there. Christ is the beginning of our community. And everything that we build up, everything that we build in this world, in this church, has to center around and has to be focused on Christ. Because He says if we put our trust in Him. Now to you who believe, the stone is precious, but those who don't believe, He's a stone that causes men to stumble and a rock that makes men fall. He's what? He's sure for those who believe in Him and those who trust on Him, but those who go against Him will stumble and fall. If we try to do anything in this church, in this world, against Christ or opposed to Christ, it's not going to succeed, is it? Are we going to, if we try to do anything as a church, if we try to do anything as a college group for Christ, if we try to go out on a mission trip and we don't include Christ in the planning of it and the promoting of it, then nothing's going to happen. That's why prayer is so important. That's why seeking the face of God is so important before we start to plan things. Asking God, should we plan this and what should we do? I think of Psalm 127 that says, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain to get it done.